in our packets from Ms. Morris, and is she here? Do you wish to speak further?
I do, please.
Just ask you to give your name and address, please.
My name is Polly Morris, and I live at 18 Edward Street here in Keene. And I would like to clarify that this letter was coming from me as a concerned citizen. It was not coming from the Monadnock Voices for Prevention organization. The paper, the Sentinel sort of misconstrued that I was a mental health counselor, which I am not, and that my organization was a mental health and substance abuse organization, and it is not. I'm a substance misuse prevention coordinator, which I have experience working in the substance misuse field and have many trainings in suicide prevention. So I have training and experience, but I'm not a mental health counselor, so I want to be clear. My concern, however, was that in the normal morning process, something as public as a display like that, a time frame needs to be, so it needs to have a cap time, because this kind of behavior in a community can cause people to, it perpetuates the idea of suicide ideology. So folks might think that someone like Robin Williams, who's a very public figure, a very beloved actor, his death by suicide might trigger others to do the same, thinking that there's glamorizing or glorifying or just as an easy way out. And I don't mean that in the sense that it's an easy way out for anyone, but the behavior gets perpetuated by leaving something up so long. And one of the examples that I had given in my letter was that when a president dies, we lower our flags to half-mast for 30 days. But there's a starting time and there's a stopping time, so that we have that significant amount of time to grieve and to mourn, to publicly express how we feel, and then it's time to move on, to move forward. So that was my intention, and I just was trying to start the process. I didn't know what it would entail.
Okay. A quick question, if I may. The letter we received had the Monadnock Voices for Prevention, this letterhead from, so when you say you're not representing the Monadnock Voices, can you just clarify that?
I'm going to clarify that I'm a prevention specialist.
Yes.
So through my job, I've been trained in substance misuse prevention and suicide trainings.
Mhm.
However, the concern started as a concern of my own.
Okay. So this is not an official, what you stated in this letter is not necessarily the position of the Monadnock Voices for Prevention?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Morris, members of the committee at this point? No? I don't know how this discussion will unfold this evening, but at this point, I don't have any other questions at this point. But I just want to clarify, you're concerned that the memorial as it stands for the length of time it has been up can have an adverse effect on
the community.
who, now, when you say community, people in the community who may be depressed, substance abusing, prone to suicidal ideation,
Yes.
and maybe active planning.
Yes.
Many folks like that who you have experience working with.
Well, that's what I've learned in some of the
Yes.
trainings that I've taken, yes.
Questions? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any members of,
For staff. For staff, I do.
for staff? Okay. Counselor O'Connor.
Are we okay to go forward with asking staff now?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we'll go to the public.
I guess I'll, well, city manager, do we know who owns this building on the corner where the sign of Parrish Shoes has been painted?
It is privately owned. I don't know I don't know off the top of my head, but we can certainly find out, but it's privately owned property.
My observation is part of the memorial actually is on private property. There are photographs and posters and I think writing that's actually on the building itself and then some on the sidewalk close to the building.
That's correct.
Yeah. Councilor Manwaring.
I have a sort of comment or question, I guess, and that is, it's my understanding that for the Pumpkin Festival, which is October 18th and 19th, all the sidewalks are cleared. Is that correct?
Yes, as when the city council gives permission to the Pumpkin Fest to have a certain area that's designated for their purposes, then yes, that's correct. The sidewalks are cleared of anything that would impede their activities.
Councilman Emery?
So, is there a plan to move the, whatever, if we leave everything as is until the 18th or 19th, is there a plan to, say, take it to Public Works or something like that, or?
I'm not aware of a particular plan. The items that are there barely protrude onto the sidewalk. I think if you walk by, you'll notice that they might, a few inches perhaps, depending upon what the item might be. So I don't know that there's a plan per se. In having a conversation with Polly about this when she called my office, I indicated to her that I thought that either Pumpkin Fest or the advent of winter with our sidewalk plows would obviously result in the removal of anything that impeded those activities, but there is no specific plan right now. And it doesn't deal with the building wall itself, which is private property.
Thank you.
Could I make another suggestion,
Uh,
Mr. Chair?
Sure, yeah, and then I'd like to open up for public comment. That's all right.
You want me to restate my name again?
Please do, I know it's repetitive, but it's,
My name is Polly Morris, 18 Edward Street here in Keene. And so, again, my intention in the beginning was to be respectful to the folks who wanted to express their emotions over the loss of Robin Williams. So, at the talk of removal, perhaps it might be the idea, and I had suggested we put something in the paper to let people know that the transition would be happening, and so if they wanted to go and take back some of the mementos that they had laid on the street, they could. So maybe some sort of a time frame, instead of just taking it away in the middle of the night, that might upset people if we could say, okay, this is what the city council has decided to do, if that's what we decide. And folks, if they want to come back and take their mementos back, they are welcome to, and perhaps that might make the transition easier and folks be better in the mourning process. And then I had also had the intention of putting some resources in the community for folks who are grieving and might need some place to go to further express their feelings. So, thank you.
any members of the public have comments or searches?
A long time since I sat, it's kind of like a school desk. My name's Steve Lindsey. Is this close enough?
I believe it is.
Okay. I live
Just-
at
if you just-
17
Oh, thank you.
Center Street, Keene, New Hampshire. And I have an interest in this myself. It seems this year's been a banner year for free speech discussion with the chalking issue back in June in Central Square, and now this. We have the public is expressing itself on the side of a private building, but also on the sidewalk. So we got two things, the sidewalk and the private property. And a letter was sent in claiming that this glorifies suicide. And I take issue with that. I think history...
Could you, when you're referencing a letter that suggests that this glorifies suicide,
The letter...
the letter here on record? From,
Right,
Ms. Moore?
Polly Morris.
So it's your opinion that's the concern?
That's the
Okay.
concern. Now, glorify, I take issue with that. The history says otherwise. Suicides have always been shamed. It's part of our culture. They were buried in segregated cemetery plots in unconsecrated grounds. James Joyce and Ulysses addresses this issue in the famous cemetery scene. We don't discuss suicide. And my feeling is that the sentiment of this letter, under the guise of glorifying suicide, actually brings back the specter of the shaming of suicide. And I think we need to discuss suicide openly, and this demonstration, this project that people have just, in the public have just come out, is a way of doing it. So rather than suppressing that, we need to embrace it. We need to discuss this actor's suicide, but also it's more than about suicide. It's also an appreciation for the man, what he did for our community, and it's more than this glorification thing. Following this logic of glorification, if we're going to remove the idea of suicide, then maybe we need to get the landlord to paint over the Parrish Shoes sign. It's a wonderful tie to the movie, but it's also the centerpiece of this demonstration of public appreciation and grief. Do we want to push that and do that? I think that's absurd. We have a stone bridge in the south of Keene where over the last 10 years, 2 people, one of them died, jumped from the bridge. It's a beautiful stone bridge on Route 101. Do we need to remove that bridge now as well? Because that's seen as a suicide thing. Do we need to put a chain link fence up around the waterfalls and breach the dam behind Starbucks? Because waterfalls and people, you know, it's a dramatic thing. We continue this thought process of not discussing suicide and the fear of glorifying suicide. It seems, in the old days it was the church that sort of condemned those people, but now it seems it's coming from, in modernity, from counselors who don't want us to discuss suicide, who want to have that removed. There are ways of maybe handling this that all sides can come together, at least in part. And a suggestion I had is to keep the current memorial up until after pumpkinfest. That will allow the public its continued freedom of expression. But then, as our city manager says, we have New England weather. We have to plow the sidewalk, and the objects that are laying there can be in the way. So perhaps, as a suggestion, we recover the best of the artifacts after those who she alluded to come back for their mementos. We can preserve the best of this display for winter display in a glass case at the Historical Society downstairs here in City Hall, over in the library somewhere. And that maybe in the spring we consider a bronze plaque, a dignified plaque on the side of the building. There's a precedent for these plaques. If you go to the former post office, 34 West Street now Bank of New Hampshire, privately owned, there's a plaque on the lower side where a deacon was killed by an Indian. Now this precedent exists so that we can continue to give remembrance to Robin Williams and do it in a dignified way. And 1 or 2 people will probably continue through the years putting candles next to them who care about it. But it's not going to be this over. It can be a compromise. So that's let's see if I have anything else to put forward here. Why not? Why not consider a compromise? And thank you for listening to me. Do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I thought about this a little bit. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or comments at this point? Okay, seeing none, I think we can consult and figure something out perhaps. If a motion is made, and during our discussion, members of the public, if they raise their hand, they can say something, but once a motion is made, just to remind folks, they can also comment, but only on the motion. And, yeah.
Chair. It's Elizabeth Brown, 26 Carolyn Lane. I work for the City of Keene Youth Services, and I've known Polly for about 5 years. I just want to state that we've had this discussion, and our goal was not to, our goal was to find a forum. We didn't know how the process worked, to discuss matters like this. We've both been in this career working with people with substance abuse issues. We know suicide firsthand. We know a lot about depression and substance abuse in this area. In no way or manner were we ever disrespecting anybody, trying to take away anybody's right for freedom of speech, but more of a concern for our vulnerable and high-risk population. We're here to find a great solution. We don't know what that is, but we felt that, you know, this is a concern, and other events may happen and will continue to happen in the future. So we're trying to figure out, as a prevention team all over, what is a good process, and we started with you folks to sort of set the continuum. Robin Williams, there's a lot of complex issues with this, and I think every single one that follows it will be complex, so we just wanted to start and have a goal as what can we do prevention-wise, what can we do to help our community. We're always out here helping people with suicide prevention. There is no way and no manner that we would ever say we're promoting or shunning suicide. We've been here to help people all along with depression and suicide. So that was absolutely not the intention at all. The intention is to, like this gentleman said, to find a compromise in honoring and also